The rain fell heavily that morning, drumming against the windows of Charles Whitmore's penthouse. It was the kind of storm that seemed endless, a gray curtain that hid the city below. Charles, one of the wealthiest men in the country, stood by the floor-to-ceiling window tapping his expensive shoes against the marble floor. His mind was stormier than the weather outside. Mary, his loyal black maid, stood silently at the edge of the room, holding a small box of her belongings. She had been working for the Whitmore family for over 10 years. In that time, she had seen everything: birthdays, anniversaries, arguments, and celebrations. She had cooked thousands of meals, cleaned every corner of the mansion until it gleamed, and quietly carried the burdens of everyone in the house. Yet today, all that did not matter. Today, she had broken an expensive vase, and Charles's patience had snapped. "Mary," he said, his voice cold and sharp, cutting through the sound of the rain. "Pack your things. You're done here." Mary's heart sank. She nodded without a word, her hands trembling slightly as she gathered her meager belongings. She did not argue. She had learned long ago that arguing with Charles was pointless. No matter how hard she worked, no matter how loyal she was, a small mistake could erase years of service in an instant. She moved slowly, each step heavy with shame and sorrow. Her old coat offered little protection against the downpour outside, and the box she carried felt heavier than it really was. Not just with her few belongings, but with 10 years of memories and a heart full of unspoken love and care. Charles watched her quietly, though he told himself he didn't care. He had spent the morning thinking about the vase, how expensive it was, how it ruined his perfect day. He did not think about Mary, about her loyalty, about all the nights she had stayed up to care for his sick son, or the times she had quietly fixed problems that no one else even noticed. In his mind, she was just a servant, and servants could be replaced. Mary paused by the door, glancing back at the mansion she had called home for so long. She had seen the smiles of the children, the laughter of family dinners, and even the rare moments when Charles's stern face softened into something kind. She remembered all of it. Her heart ached, but she did not cry, at least not yet. She had always been strong. She always tried to carry her pain silently so no one would worry. The rain outside was relentless now. Mary opened the door and stepped out. Cold water soaked her clothes almost immediately. The wind whipped at her hair and her face, but she kept walking. Every step away from the Whitmore mansion felt like leaving a piece of her soul behind. She walked through puddles, her shoes squelching, her fingers numb from the cold. People passing by barely noticed her. Some gave a sympathetic glance, but no one could stop her. There was nowhere to go, no one waiting for her with open arms. Inside, Charles finally turned away from the window. A small, unwelcome feeling pricked at him, but he quickly shoved it aside. He had work to do, meetings to attend, deals to close. There was no time to dwell on the discomfort of a maid he had fired. Yet a small part of him, buried deep under pride and anger, could not shake the image of Mary standing there in the rain, carrying her few belongings, head bowed, wet and alone. Mary's footsteps echoed faintly as she disappeared down the street. Swallowed by the gray morning and the relentless storm, she had given her life to this family, and yet now she had nothing but the rain, her memories, and the hope that somehow she would survive. The city was wet and cold, but Mary's heart burned brighter than the storm. She had been humbled, yes, but she carried a dignity that no luxury or power could take away. Even as she walked into the uncertain world outside, there was a quiet strength in her step, a determination that no one, not even Charles Whitmore, could destroy. Mary walked through the rain, each drop soaking her clothes and chilling her to the bone. Her small bag bounced against her hip as she clutched it tightly, afraid that if she let go, the world might take it from her. She didn't know where she was going. The streets were unfamiliar in the storm, slick with rain and littered with the remnants of yesterday's trash. Her heart ached, but she did not stop. She could not stop. For 10 years she had devoted her life to the Whitmore family. She had cooked their meals, cleaned their home, and cared for the children as if they were her own. She had loved the family quietly, without expectation, giving everything she had without complaint. And yet now she had been dismissed with a single harsh sentence. No gratitude. No goodbye. Just the cold words, "Pack your things. You're done here." She thought of the vase broken in a careless moment and felt a flicker of shame. But shame was not the strongest feeling inside her. Hurt was hurt and disbelief. How could someone she had loved and served for so long throw her out like trash in the rain? She had been loyal. She had been faithful. And this was her reward. The wind howled through the empty streets, but Mary kept walking. She passed a small park where children played despite the rain, splashing in puddles, their laughter ringing faintly through the gray morning. She paused for a moment watching them, and a small, bitter smile appeared on her face. Their joy seemed so simple, so innocent. She remembered her own childhood, a childhood filled with hardship and hunger, and realized that life had not been fair to her either. Mary's thoughts drifted back to the Whitmore mansion. She remembered the Christmas dinners, the warm fire, the smell of roasted chicken, and the laughter of the children. She remembered the small kindnesses, too. The time she had stayed up all night when Charles's son was sick, soothing him, wiping his fevered brow, and making him a cup of warm milk at dawn. She had done it quietly, never asking for praise. That was her way. She did not need recognition. But now, as the rain poured down, she felt the weight of 10 years in a single moment. She was alone, homeless, fired. Her hands trembled, and a tear mingled with the raindrops on her face. She did not bother to wipe it away. It didn't matter. No one was here to see her pain anyway. As she walked, Mary passed a cafe with warm light spilling onto the street. For a moment she considered going inside, buying a cup of tea and warming herself. But then she remembered the money she did not have. Every penny she had saved over the years had been spent on helping others, on keeping her small family alive. She had nothing left for herself. She shook her head and kept walking. Survival was the only thing that mattered now. Hours passed. Her shoes squelched, her coat was soaked, and her body ached from the cold. Yet, despite the exhaustion, Mary did not give up. She had faced hard times before, and she had always survived. Life had beaten her down, but it had never broken her. She kept moving forward, one step at a time, through the puddles, through the gray streets, through the endless rain. As she walked, she thought of the Whitmore family one last time, not with anger, not with resentment, but with a quiet sadness. She had loved them in her own way, had protected them when no one else noticed, had given everything she had, and now she would take those memories with her, carry them quietly in her heart as she always had. Mary finally reached the edge of the city, where the streets were quieter and the buildings smaller. She paused under the awning of a closed shop, taking a moment to breathe. The rain was still falling, relentless and cold, but she felt a strange sense of determination. She had lost her job, yes, but she had not lost herself. She had survived worse, and she would survive this too. With a deep breath, Mary stepped back into the rain. Her journey was far from over, and she did not know what awaited her. But one thing was certain. No storm, no matter how fierce, could extinguish the quiet strength that had carried her through 10 years of service, love, and sacrifice. She would survive. She had to. Mary's feet were numb, her coat soaked through, but she kept moving. She left the city streets behind and walked toward the neighborhood where she had grown up. It was a place of small houses, narrow streets, and the smell of home-cooked meals drifting through open windows. Though the neighborhood was modest and worn, it carried a warmth that the glittering towers of the city could never offer. She passed children playing in puddles, their laughter echoing through the wet streets. For a moment she stopped and watched them, a soft smile forming on her face despite the cold. Life here was simple, messy, and unpredictable, yet it was full of love. Mary remembered running through these streets as a girl, barefoot with friends who treated her like family. Memories of laughter, scraped knees, and secret hideouts came rushing back, mingling with the ache in her heart. Her stomach growled, reminding her that she had not eaten since early morning. She had saved a small bit of money for emergencies, but she had spent most of it helping others, neighbors, friends, and the occasional stray animal. Hunger gnawed at her, but pride kept her moving. She would not beg, she would not ask. She had survived before, and she would survive now. As Mary walked, she noticed the familiar faces of neighbors emerging from their homes, umbrellas in hand, watching the rain. Some waved politely, some offered a nod, and a few whispered behind their hands. She had known everyone here for years, yet she felt like a stranger. The world had changed, and she had changed too. The rain made her feel small and invisible, but it also gave her a strange sense of clarity. She had been thrown out of one world, yes, but maybe, just maybe, another one was waiting for her. Mary passed the old grocery store where she had worked as a teenager. The bell above the door jingled faintly as the wind pushed rain against it. She remembered Mr. Thompson, the kindly owner, who had given her extra bread when her family had nothing to eat. She had carried those lessons of kindness and generosity into the Whitmore household, always trying to help others quietly, without recognition. Now she wondered if those small acts had truly mattered. She had given her all, and yet she had been discarded. Her thoughts drifted to Charles. She remembered the anger in his eyes, the coldness in his voice as he had fired her. She had loved that family in her own way, and she had hoped that loyalty would be enough, but it had not. The broken vase had undone years of service. She felt a sting of bitterness, but she quickly pushed it aside. Hatred would not warm her soaked coat, nor fill her empty stomach, nor dry the rain from her hair. As the afternoon wore on, Mary finally reached her childhood home. The small house was worn, the paint peeling, but it stood proud against the storm. Her parents were gone now, but the memories of their love lingered in every corner. The kitchen where her mother had baked bread, the small garden where her father had taught her to plant flowers. She paused, letting herself remember, letting herself breathe. Here at least she was not invisible. She belonged. Neighbors began to notice her more closely. Some brought her blankets, others offered hot tea. They knew Mary, had known her for years, and their kindness reminded her that not all people were like Charles. Some saw the heart, not the uniform. Some remembered her when she had helped quietly, never asking for praise. Slowly, Mary began to feel the warmth returning to her body, and even more to her spirit. Yet despite the comfort of her old neighborhood, a part of her mind kept drifting back to the mansion, to Charles, to the life she had lost. She could not deny the pain of being discarded, of being treated like she did not matter, and yet she also knew that she carried a strength no storm could take from her. She had survived hunger, cold, loneliness, and now heartbreak. She would survive this too. That night, Mary sat on the porch of her childhood home, wrapped in a thin blanket offered by a neighbor. The rain had slowed, but the streets were still wet and glistening under the faint light of street lamps. She thought of the future, uncertain and unknown, and felt a quiet determination settle over her. Life had thrown her out into the storm, but she had walked through it. She had survived. And tomorrow she would keep moving forward because she was stronger than the rain, stronger than anyone who had ever doubted her. The next morning, Charles Whitmore awoke to a quiet, empty mansion. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets outside sparkling and wet under the pale sunlight. He wandered through the house, still irritated at the memory of the broken vase, but now something felt different. An emptiness lingered that he could not ignore. The silence was heavy, deeper than before, as if the walls themselves missed the person who had filled them with care. That's when he noticed it. A small, neat package sitting on the front steps, partially soaked by the rain. At first he frowned, thinking it was some careless delivery. But then he saw the handwriting, Mary's handwriting, precise and gentle, familiar from years of notes she had left around the house. He hesitated, a strange feeling rising in his chest, but curiosity won. He picked it up and carried it inside, careful not to let the rain ruin it further. The package was small, a simple cardboard box, tied with string. Inside were dozens of folded notes, each one carefully written, each one a small piece of Mary's heart. Charles opened the first note. The words made him pause. I remember the night little Jason had a fever. I stayed up with him until he slept, and you didn't even notice. I only wanted him to be safe. Charles's hand shook slightly. He had never thought of Mary in this way. Not as a human being with feelings, not as someone who had given herself completely to his family. She had been a presence he had taken for granted, invisible unless she made a mistake. He unfolded another note. I know I am only your maid, but I have loved this family quietly, like one of my own. I have cooked, cleaned, and cared because I wanted everyone to be happy. I never asked for thanks. Charles felt a tight knot forming in his chest. He had never realized the depth of her dedication. The vase, the small mistakes, he had judged her harshly without thinking of all she had done for him and his family. Each note he read was a revelation, a mirror reflecting the kindness he had overlooked for years. He opened another note. This one a small story of his wife's difficult day, how Mary had prepared her favorite tea, quietly making her smile without expecting recognition. Then one about the family's anniversary, how Mary had stayed late to clean the house perfectly while the family rested, so everything would be just right. Tears began to well in Charles's eyes. He had been blind, selfish, and cruel in his arrogance. He had fired a woman who had loved and protected his family more than he had ever realized. His anger at a broken vase now seemed meaningless, petty, almost shameful. He sat down. The note spread across the table in front of him, and felt the weight of his mistakes like a physical burden pressing down on his chest. The final note was different. It was not just memories, but a message of love, forgiveness, and hope. I leave these for you not to make you feel guilty, but so you can remember, I have loved this family. I have cared. I will always wish the best for you, even if you do not see me again. Charles could barely breathe. The realization hit him hard. He had lost someone invaluable. Someone who had never asked for praise, who had given everything quietly, and who now might never return. He had dismissed not just a maid, but a heart, a soul, a piece of his family that he could not replace. For hours he sat in silence, reading and rereading the notes. Each one pulled at a part of him that he had long ignored, the part that remembered the warmth of Mary's kindness, the small but meaningful ways she had shaped the family's life. He had never felt this helpless before. For the first time, he understood what loyalty and love really meant. By the time he finally stood, the sun had broken through the clouds, casting golden light across the mansion. Charles walked to the window, looking out at the city and imagining Mary somewhere out there, alone but proud. His pride and anger had vanished, replaced with regret, longing, and a fierce determination to make things right. He knew, without a doubt, that he had to find her. He had to apologize, not with words alone, but with actions. The woman he had dismissed in the rain had left behind more than notes. She had left behind a lesson that would change him forever. And Charles Whitmore, the proud billionaire who had once thought nothing could touch him, realized that his life would not be complete without Mary back in it. Not as a maid, not as a servant, but as the heart of the family she had always been. Charles Whitmore could not focus on anything that day. He sat in his office, staring at the pile of notes Mary had left behind, the words etched into his mind like a mirror reflecting everything he had ignored. Each note was a memory, a story, a piece of her heart that he had taken for granted. He had always believed that wealth and power could control life, that he could bend the world to his will. But no amount of money could bring back the woman he had so carelessly dismissed. He remembered her smile, quiet but genuine, the way she moved through the mansion with patience and grace, her eyes always watchful, always kind. He remembered the nights she had stayed awake with his sick son, the mornings she had prepared breakfast for his wife without complaint, the countless times she had fixed problems no one else had even noticed. All of it flashed before him now, and for the first time he saw Mary not as a maid, but as the soul of the household, the glue that had held his family together. Regret gnawed at him. He had been blind, selfish, and cruel. A vase had seemed like the end of the world, yet it had cost him more than any object ever could. The love and loyalty of a woman who had given everything without expecting anything in return. His chest ached, a physical pain that mirrored the guilt in his heart. He could almost hear her footsteps fading in the rain, see her small frame disappearing into the gray morning, and it hurt more than he had ever imagined possible. By mid-morning, he knew he could not sit still any longer. He had to find her. He picked up his phone and called friends, neighbors, anyone who might know where she had gone. He offered money, favors, anything he could give, but nothing mattered more than finding Mary. Hours passed, then an entire afternoon. He drove through streets he barely knew, scanning every corner, every familiar neighborhood, hoping, praying, that she had found shelter somewhere safe. He thought about the possibility that she might not forgive him. The thought was unbearable. He had treated her with coldness, had dismissed her in the rain, had shown nothing but anger and impatience. Could someone like Mary, who had loved quietly and faithfully, ever return to someone like him after such betrayal? The question haunted him, but it did not stop him. He had to try. He had to make amends. As evening fell, Charles returned to the mansion, exhausted and empty. The lights of the city twinkled below him, but he felt no joy. He walked through the halls, each room echoing with memories of Mary, her laughter, her soft humming while cleaning, the way she had arranged flowers just so, even when no one noticed. The house felt cold, lonely, hollow without her. He realized that wealth could buy comfort, luxury, even admiration, but it could not buy love, loyalty, or the warmth she had brought into their lives. He sank into a chair, head in his hands, and whispered her name. "Mary, I'm so sorry." The words felt inadequate, a poor substitute for the years he had wasted, the hurt he had caused, but they were all he had, and he repeated them over and over, hoping that somehow they could reach her wherever she was. The hours dragged on, and Charles made a silent vow. He would not rest until he found her. He would apologize in every way possible. He would show her that he valued her, that he had learned from his mistakes. She had given everything, and now it was his turn to give something back, the truth of his heart, and the promise that he would never take her kindness for granted again. Finally, in the quiet of the night, Charles gathered himself. He grabbed his coat and keys, determined to search the neighborhoods she might have returned to ask the neighbors, to follow any lead. He was no longer the proud billionaire who thought the world owed him obedience. He was a man humbled, transformed by the realization of what he had lost, and what he might never regain if he did not act quickly. Rain had once separated them, but Charles now knew he would follow Mary through any storm, through any hardship, to make things right. Her loyalty, her kindness, her quiet love had changed him in ways he could not ignore. And he would not stop until she knew, truly knew, that she mattered more than any vase, any house, or any fortune in the world. Charles Whitmore could not eat. He could not sleep. The mansion felt emptier than ever, every corner echoing with Mary's absence. Her laughter, her soft footsteps, her quiet hum while cleaning, every memory haunted him. For the first time in his life, Charles realized that money could not fix everything. No wealth, no power, no luxury could replace what he had lost, and he had lost Mary. He sat in his office, staring at the notes she had left behind. Each one was a piece of her heart, a reminder of the loyalty and love he had never acknowledged. He held one in his hands, the edges damp from the rain that had followed her out of his life, and read it again. "I leave these for you, not to make you feel guilty, but so you can remember. I have loved this family. I have cared. I will always wish the best for you, even if you do not see me again." Her words cut deeper than any insult, deeper than any punishment. She had loved them unconditionally, and he had dismissed her in the cold rain. The guilt was unbearable. He realized that he could not wait, could not hope that she would return on her own. He had to find her, no matter what it took. He called old friends and neighbors, explaining the situation. At first they were confused, even amused. "She's just a maid," one of them said. Why are you making such a fuss?" But Charles did not listen. He could not ignore the truth any longer. She was not just a maid. She had been the heart of his family, the quiet protector, the one who held everything together, and now he feared he had pushed her too far. Hours turned into the afternoon and Charles drove through the city and the outskirts, following every lead. Every small neighborhood, every familiar street, every corner she might have walked to, he searched. Rain had left puddles in the streets, shimmering under the fading sunlight, and with each reflection he imagined Mary's small face, soaked and cold, walking alone. The thought tightened his chest, making him desperate. He asked shopkeepers, street vendors, and neighbors if they had seen a woman matching Mary's description. Some shook their heads. Some hesitated. But one finally spoke, pointing toward a small, worn neighborhood on the edge of the city. "I think I saw her yesterday," the man said. "She looked tired, but she kept walking, head down." Charles didn't hesitate. He drove faster, heart pounding, hands gripping the wheel tightly. He could see the neighborhood now, small houses, narrow streets, children playing despite the puddles. Everything was familiar, yet it seemed foreign. And there, under the faint light of the evening, he saw a small figure, Mary, sitting on the edge of a porch wrapped in a thin blanket, her head bowed, watching the rain-soaked street. Time seemed to slow. Charles parked, his heart hammering in his chest. He stepped out of the car, every footstep heavy with emotion. She did not notice him at first. She was lost in her thoughts, unaware that the person who had hurt her most was standing only a few feet away, trembling with regret and fear. "Mary," he whispered, his voice cracking. The word carried everything he felt: apology, longing, guilt, and love. Mary looked up, startled. Her eyes widened as recognition hit her. For a moment she did not speak. The air between them was thick with everything left unsaid, everything unacknowledged. Charles's eyes were red, his face pale, his body shaking. Not from the cold, but from the weight of his own remorse. I was wrong," he said, voice barely audible. "I didn't see. I didn't understand. I need you to forgive me. I can't live without you in our lives. Please, Mary, come back. Not just as a maid, but as part of this family. You are more than I ever realized." Mary's lips trembled, tears forming in her eyes. She had heard apologies before, but none had ever carried the depth of feeling she saw in his. She had been hurt, yes, deeply. She had been abandoned, cold and wet, left to face the world alone. But now she saw something different. Sincerity, humility, and a longing to make things right. For the first time in weeks, Mary felt the smallest flicker of hope. The storm was not over, not entirely, but maybe, just maybe, the heart that had been so cruelly dismissed could be healed. She looked at him, her own tears falling freely, and for a moment the world felt still. Mary sat on the porch, tears falling freely onto her soaked blanket, as Charles knelt in front of her. The rain had stopped completely now, leaving the streets glistening under the soft glow of the streetlights. The air was still, almost sacred, as if the world itself paused to witness the moment between them. Charles's hands shook, not from cold, but from the weight of his own remorse. "I was wrong, Mary," he whispered again, his voice trembling. I didn't understand. I thought I was protecting my family, but I was blind. I've been blind to everything you've done, to all the love and care you've given us. Please, forgive me." Mary looked at him, her eyes full of pain, but also a quiet strength that had carried her through years of hardship. She remembered the cold rain, the long walk, the emptiness after he had dismissed her so harshly. She remembered the sacrifices she had made silently, the loyalty she had offered without asking for anything in return. She had been invisible to him, but now she saw the raw, vulnerable man before her, humbled in a way that only true regret could bring. "Charles," she began softly, her voice shaking, I don't know if I can forget how you threw me out. I trusted this family. I gave my life to you, and you didn't even see me." Charles lowered his head, tears spilling down his face. I know, Mary, I failed you. I failed to see the heart of this family, you. I cannot change the past, but I swear I will spend the rest of my life making it right. I need you, not just to work for us, but to be part of our lives again if you'll let me. For a long moment Mary was silent. She studied his face, the sincerity in his eyes, the trembling hands, the pain etched on his face. She could see the man he had been, and the man he was now, transformed by guilt, remorse, and the realization of her worth. Slowly she nodded, a small, fragile smile appearing through her tears. I will come back, she said finally. But you must promise me something, Charles. That you will see me, not just as a maid, not as someone who serves, but as a person, as someone who has a heart, a life, and love to give. Charles took her hands in his, gripping them tightly as if afraid she might slip away again. I promise, Mary, I promise you, from now on I will see you. I will honor you. I will never take your kindness, your love, or your loyalty for granted again. The storm of the past days seemed to fade, leaving only a calm, quiet warmth. Mary allowed herself to be led back to the car, back to the mansion, but this time it felt different. She was not returning as someone afraid, discarded, or invisible. She was returning with dignity, with self-respect, and with the knowledge that her worth had finally been seen. Inside the mansion, Charles led her through the halls, showing her the empty rooms that had felt so cold without her. She touched the polished tables, straightened the cushions, and arranged the flowers with her quiet, practiced care. But this time it was different. This time she did it not as a servant, but as someone whose presence was cherished, whose heart was valued, and whose love was acknowledged. The children ran to her, hugging her tightly. Sensing the relief and joy that had returned, Charles's wife approached, tears in her eyes, embracing Mary, as if welcoming a family member she had always known. Mary felt a warmth in her chest, a healing that had begun in the rain and was now complete. She realized that loyalty, kindness, and love, even when overlooked, were never wasted. They always found a way to return, in ways she had never expected. That evening, the Whitmore mansion was filled with laughter, warmth, and gratitude. Charles sat quietly, watching Mary move through the house, helping, caring, smiling. He had learned a lesson no money could buy. That true loyalty and love cannot be measured in wealth, nor replaced with anger or punishment. They must be recognized, cherished, and honored. Mary, too, learned something that day. She had survived the storm, the betrayal, and the cold dismissal. But she also realized the power of forgiveness. She had loved quietly, faithfully, and had been patient. In the end, her strength and grace had not only preserved her dignity, but had transformed the heart of a man who had once been blind to everything she was. And so, in a house that had once been cold and empty, warmth returned, bonds were restored, hearts were healed, and Mary's place, always earned, never given, was finally recognized. The rain had fallen, yes, but it had washed away the pride, the blindness, and the cruelty, leaving only love, respect, and gratitude behind.